The rain doesn't fall in this city, it remembers. It remembers every deal whispered under a streetlight, every promise made between thunderclaps, every dream that cost more than it gave back. Tonight, we follow three men who built an empire out of that rain. One saw beauty where there was only dust. One mistook chaos for freedom. And one kept the books while the world burned around him. Bugsy Siegel, Dutch Schultz, Meyer Lansky. Together, they wrote the unwritten history of America's under-night life. A story of loyalty, ambition, and silence, told beneath the hum of neon and the rhythm of falling rain. So close your eyes. Let the storm take its time. Because in this world, even the rain has a memory. The rain has a way of finding every roof that leaks, every crack in the old city's bones. In the Bronx, it doesn't fall, it seeps. Through tenement windows that never quite shut, through hallways that smell of cabbage and whiskey and dreams that never came true. It's 1919 and the war is done, but the noise hasn't left the streets. The trains still groan through the night. The drunks still sing. The kids still chase each other under the weak gaslight that flickers like a tired heartbeat. And down below, somewhere in a damp basement, a boy named Benjamin Siegel presses his face against the glass and watches the rain blur the city into watercolor ghosts. He's 17 and restless, the kind of restless that burns behind the eyes. His father sells fabrics nobody buys. His mother worries about the rent and the draft board that still sends letters for boys who came back without legs. Bugsy, they don't call him that yet. He hates the smell of wet wool, the cold that creeps into his bones. He wants light, color, noise. He wants the world to stop ignoring him. Across the block, Meyer Lansky moves through the same storm, hands in pockets, a book pressed under his arm to keep it dry. He's smaller, quieter, the sort of boy who doesn't make trouble but somehow finds his way into it anyway. He's thinking about numbers, the way odds shift, how one roll of dice can ruin or save a man. His mind is sharp, fast, a little cruel when it has to be. He doesn't believe in luck, only calculation. But tonight, the rain makes everything uncertain, even the ground he's walking on. He spots Benjamin under the awning of a shuttered store, a kid with slick hair, good shoes, a grin that could sell sin to a priest. They've met before in passing. But tonight the rain slows the world just enough for conversation. You're Lansky, right? Yeah. You're the one always getting chased by the cops. Not always, Bugsy says, smiling. Only when they catch me. They laugh, and the sound doesn't belong in that street. It's too alive, too young, too sure that tomorrow will be better. That's how it starts. The partnership that will outlive empires and outlast morals. Not with a handshake or a plan, but with two kids waiting for the rain to stop. The next morning smells of bread and coal smoke. The newspapers talk about prohibition like it's a new religion. The end of vice, the cleansing of the soul. But the city knows better. Where there's law, there's loophole. And where there's thirst, there's business. Meyer reads the paper over coffee he can't afford, while Bugsy scans the streets for opportunity. Somewhere between those two instincts, order and chaos, a quiet empire begins to form. They start small. Dice games in basements, cards in back rooms, whiskey hidden behind flour sacks. Bugsy runs the muscle, Meyer runs the math. If one gets caught, the other knows how to make it disappear. It's the kind of friendship the city doesn't make anymore, equal parts survival and fate. In another life they might have been lawyers, inventors, professors. But in this one they are what the Bronx made them. Dreamers with dirty shoes and clean ambition. Night comes fast in New York, especially in the rain. Streetcars hiss on the tracks. Radios hum with the slow rhythm of jazz. From a third-floor window, Bugsy looks down at the puddles catching light from every passing car. He thinks about escape. Not from the cops, but from smallness. He wants something big, something that would make his mother's rent paid forever and his name whispered in rooms where silk gowns brush the floor. You ever think about what's next? He asks Meyer one night, tossing a coin across a poker table. Meyer doesn't look up. Next is tomorrow. I mean really next. Not another game, not another shipment. I'm talking big. A city with no rules. Every city has rules, Meyer says quietly. The trick is to write them before someone else does. Bugsy laughs. That's why I like you, kid. You think like a priest but talk like a killer. They don't know it yet, but they're both right. Vegas, Havana, Wall Street, all waiting beyond the rain. That same winter, a rumor slides through the underworld like a drop of oil in water. A man named Dutch Schultz is taking over Harlem. He's older, rougher, already a legend in the speakeasies. Some say he was born with brass knuckles for bones. Others say he's just another Bronx kid who got tired of being stepped on. Dutch drinks too much, laughs too loud, and doesn't forget insults. He's the kind of man who makes friends through fear and enemies through everything else. But he pays well, and in a city drowning in bootleg whiskey, that's all anyone really needs to know. When Bugsy finally meets him, it's in a back room behind a butcher shop, the kind of place where the meat hooks never stop swaying. Dutch sits at a table counting money, his sleeves rolled, his eyes red from gin. "You the Siegel kid?" "That's right. Heard you're fast with a trigger. Only when someone gives me a reason." Dutch grins. "Good. I like men who need reasons." Keeps the city clean. Bugsy doesn't reply. He just watches the man's hands, steady, thick, scarred. He thinks about what Meyer said earlier that day, "Don't trust anyone who counts slower than he breathes." Dutch counts like he's daring the numbers to lie. By the time Bugsy leaves that room, the rain has stopped, but the streets still shine. He feels it, the line between ambition and danger, thin as the reflection of light on wet asphalt. Weeks turn into months, and the city hums like an engine about to explode. Bootleg liquor floods the speakeasies. Politicians look the other way. And every night the rain falls, sometimes outside, sometimes in their heads. Meyer finds beauty in the patterns. Dutch finds power in the noise. Bugsy just wants something that feels real. They move through the decade like ghosts of a coming storm. Their names spread, whispered in cigar smoke and printed in police blotters. They buy suits, cars, a little respect. But the hunger doesn't fade. It never does. In a small rented room, Meyer draws charts in pencil, arrows, boxes, percentages. He maps out how every dollar flows, from speakeasy to cop, from politician to judge, from dealer to dreamer. He sees order where others see chaos. He sees the architecture of sin. And quietly, without knowing it, he becomes the first accountant of the underworld. One night, Bugsy finds him asleep at his desk, rain tapping the window like fingers. He shakes his head, grinning. "You'll drown in numbers, kid." Meyer blinks awake. Better than drowning in blood. Blood's easy to wash off. Not if it's yours. The silence between them is heavy, almost holy. Outside, thunder murmurs over the East River. Inside, two futures stare at each other and wonder which one will blink first. As the year turns, Dutch Schultz declares war, not on rival gangs but on boredom. He opens more bars, hires more men, bribes more officials. He believes he can outrun the law by staying louder than it. But the louder he gets, the smaller the city feels. Bugsy watches from the sidelines. Meyer takes notes. And somewhere deep down, both of them know this won't last. Nothing built on rain ever does. It's early morning when Bugsy walks home through a quiet street. The rain has stopped, leaving puddles like mirrors. He looks down and sees not his reflection, but 1,000 tiny lights, windows, lampposts, dreams stacked on top of each other. He imagines a place where night never ends, where money glows in neon and the rain smells like perfume. A city built from everything they were never allowed to have. He doesn't know its name yet. He only knows it's calling. The final scene of part 1 slows to a whisper. Meyer closes his notebook, Bugsy lights a cigarette, Dutch counts his cash. 3 men in 3 rooms, each hearing the same distant thunder. The rain begins again, steady, soft, endless. It falls over the Bronx, over the dreams, over the sins still waiting to be made. "Some nights," Bugsy murmurs, "it feels like the rain's trying to wash us clean." "Maybe," Meyer says, "but maybe it just wants to see what's underneath." The room fades. The sound of rain deepens. The world drifts into sleep. And from somewhere far beyond the city, a voice, calm, tired, eternal, whispers. This is only the beginning. The rain hasn't stopped since winter. It's become a rhythm now, part of the city's breathing. It drums on rooftops, whispers through alleyways, and seeps into men's souls until even their silence sounds like rain. For Bugsy, it's no longer background noise. It's a signal, the sound that starts the night's work. Every drop against glass means another shipment has slipped through the docks, another deal signed in shadows. New York has learned how to drink again. Officially, the bars are closed. Unofficially, the whole city is drunk. Speakeasies bloom like night flowers. In Harlem, jazz leaks through brick walls and laughter drowns the sermons. Every bottle, every coin, every whispered name on the ledger, it all runs through one idea: business built on thirst. And business is good. Bugsy Siegel has changed since the Bronx nights. He wears better suits now, carries himself with the confidence of a man who's been both hunter and hunted. He smiles more, but his eyes are harder. He moves through the speakeasies like a storm in a tailored coat, charming, dangerous, unforgettable. Meyer Lansky stays behind, in a small apartment cluttered with ledgers and cigarette smoke. He doesn't need crowds. He needs patterns. He can track a shipment from Canada to Manhattan without ever leaving his chair. To him, the business is a math problem, just bigger, bloodier, and far more profitable. Dutch Schultz, meanwhile, grows louder. His men patrol Harlem with iron smiles. He laughs too long, drinks too much, and doesn't care who hears his name. The newspapers call him the Beer Baron. He likes that. But what he loves is control, the sense that the city itself bends when he speaks. One rainy night, they meet again, the three of them, in a back room above a bakery on 2nd Avenue. The bread downstairs smells sweet. The room upstairs smells like money and danger. Dutch leans against the table, a cigar between his teeth. You boys ever think small? Bugsy laughs. You ever think before you drink? Meyer stays quiet, writing figures in a notebook. Dutch squints at him. You still with your numbers, Lansky? You can't count loyalty, you know? Without looking up, Meyer replies, that's why I only count money. The room goes silent for a moment, not tense, just aware. They all know the rules. Respect makes peace, but silence makes power. Dutch finally grins, slapping the table. I like you too. You're smart and you don't scare easy. That's good. Fear's expensive. He slides a small envelope across the wood. Inside, a list of routes, ships, names. A map of sin written in pencil. Bugsy glances at Meyer. Meyer nods once. That's how alliances are born, not in blood but in rain and ink. Weeks pass. Money flows like the whiskey they sell. Bugsy and Meyer refine the art of invisibility, buying politicians, paying off police, keeping everything neat. Dutch, on the other hand, prefers noise. He throws parties with orchestras, feeds whole blocks during holidays, and tips bartenders with diamonds. But the louder he gets, the more the law listens. By summer, the papers whisper about taxes. The word means nothing to men like Dutch, until it means everything. Meyer reads the headlines first. He folds the paper, places it beside his coffee, and says softly, it's starting. Bugsy doesn't ask what he means. He already knows. The city moves faster now. Trucks through tunnels, crates in warehouses, envelopes in coat pockets. Every night has its rhythm. Meyer calculating. Bugsy collecting. Dutch commanding. And under it all, the same steady rain. Sometimes, after a long night, Bugsy walks alone through the streets, his shoes splashing through puddles reflecting the glow of neon signs. He likes the sound. It reminds him that no matter how much money they make, the streets still own them. He lights a cigarette beneath a street lamp, and the flame trembles in the wind. He imagines a place where the rain doesn't smell like rust, where the streets are wide and clean, and every face is smiling. A city where he could walk forever and never have to look over his shoulder. He doesn't know it yet, but he's dreaming of Nevada. Meyer, meanwhile, keeps his focus. He's begun building what he calls a network of silence. Each man knows only one other man. Each shipment moves without a trace. If one piece falls, the rest survives. It's beautiful in its own dark logic, a blueprint for the future. Dutch doesn't see beauty in it. He sees limits. He wants more bars, more power, more fear. And he's willing to break every rule to get it. He calls Meyer one night, voice thick with whiskey. You think too much, kid. You can't win this game by counting. You win it by shooting first. Meyer says nothing for a long moment. Then quietly, that's how you lose the house, Dutch. You bet it all on noise. Dutch laughs and hangs up. The sound echoes longer than the rain. Autumn brings the first real chill, the kind that creeps under doors and into bones. Bugsy returns from Jersey one night with news. One of Dutch's men has disappeared. No one talks about it, but everyone feels it. The alliance is cracking. In the quiet hours before dawn, Meyer visits Bugsy's apartment. They sit by the window, rain streaking down the glass, both too tired to pretend they're just businessmen. He's slipping, Meyer says. Dutch. The rain's getting to him. He hears things that aren't there. Maybe he's just scared. Scared men make noise, Meyer says softly, and noise brings light. They fall silent again. Somewhere below, a trolley hums past. The city is still awake. It's always awake. But for the first time, Bugsy feels the weight of it. He doesn't want to rot here. He wants out. He wants sun, open roads, and a sky too big to hide under. Dutch's paranoia grows like mold. He stops trusting his men. He stops sleeping. He keeps a gun on the table during every meal. Sometimes he talks about fate, sometimes about angels. Mostly he talks to himself. By now, the rain sounds different, sharper, colder, like nails on glass. The newspapers run new headlines. Prosecutor Thomas Dewey targets Dutch Schultz. The name Dewey becomes a ghost that follows him everywhere. He drinks harder. He starts to dream of killing the man before the trial begins. Bugsy and Meyer watch from the edges. They know the story too well, how it always ends when pride gets louder than profit. "We should pull out," Meyer says. "And leave him?" He's already gone. One last meeting, October 1935. Rain again, soft and endless. Dutch sits in the corner of a small Harlem restaurant, his face pale, his suit wrinkled. He's talking about destiny, about building something that lasts forever. But even he doesn't believe it anymore. When he finally stands, the chair creaks like an old confession. He nods to Bugsy, raises his glass to Meyer, and says, "If they want a war, they'll get one." That's the last time they see him alive. The next day, the city wakes to the sound of rain, heavier than usual, thicker somehow, as if the clouds themselves are mourning. A headline in the evening edition reads, "Dutch Schultz shot in Newark Cafe, 4 dead." Bugsy doesn't read the article. He just stares at the puddles outside the window, watching them ripple. Meyer closes his notebook and says, "It's over." Bugsy shakes his head. "No, it's just begun." That night, the rain softens. The streets gleam. Somewhere in the dark, the city exhales, one dream ended, another waiting. Bugsy leans on the window ledge, eyes tracing the skyline. He can almost see beyond it now, past the river, past the desert, past the limits of everything he's known. "You ever think there's a place," he murmurs, "where the rain never reaches?" Meyer replies, "No. But you can build one if you try." Bugsy smiles, small and tired. He doesn't answer. He's already seeing it, a place of neon and sand, pink birds and endless night. Outside, thunder rolls, low, distant, patient. The city turns off its lights one by one, as if giving permission to rest. And through the rain, the whisper returns. Every empire begins with a dream, and ends with one too. Rain falls differently in Harlem. It doesn't patter. It pounds like a preacher demanding repentance. It echoes off tin roofs and cobblestone streets, slides down neon signs, and pools in doorways where jazz hums low and tired. To Dutch Schultz, it sounds like prophecy. He's been hiding for weeks. The tax trial, the headlines, the whispers, they've all blended into a single hum in his skull. He drinks to quiet it. He fails every night. Now even the rain seems to be saying his name. He stays in a small apartment above a club called the Cotton Tree, the kind of place where the air is thick with smoke and saxophones. Below him, people dance, shoulders brushing, glasses clinking, laughter spilling through the floorboards. Above them, Dutch sits alone in a wooden chair, counting. Not money, seconds. He counts each one like it owes him something. 1 for the empire, he mutters. 2 for the rats. 3 for the judge. 4. He stops. Somewhere a bottle tips over. The whiskey runs slow, golden, over the table, then drips to the floor. It looks like melted time. Dutch watches it spread, hypnotized. He's forgotten what night it is, what month, what year. He only knows the trial is coming, the moment where the world decides if he still matters. He doesn't plan to let it decide. Down in Little Italy, Bugsy and Meyer hear the rumors first. Dutch wants the prosecutor dead. It sounds like madness. It is madness. Meyer shakes his head over coffee. He's going to destroy himself. Bugsy shrugs. Maybe he already has. You think he'll really do it? I think he's the kind of man who'd rather go down swinging than kneel. Meyer looks out the window at the rain-soaked street. The cars move slow, their headlights slicing through mist. You can't shoot your way out of a storm, he says quietly. Bugsy doesn't answer. He's thinking about the storm inside Dutch, the kind that starts with noise and ends with silence. Dutch no longer trusts the mirror. Talks back to him now. When he leans close, the reflection moves first. When he turns away, he swears it laughs. He starts writing on the walls, not words, just shapes, loops and arrows, plans that don't go anywhere. He calls it God's map. He says it shows who's loyal and who's lying. His men still come by with updates, envelopes, warnings, but they leave faster every time. They can smell the end. And endings make people nervous. One night, the rain comes harder than ever. Harlem drowns in reflections. Inside the Cotton Tree, the band plays St. Louis blues, slow and aching. Dutch sits in the corner, staring at his drink, lips moving like prayer. Bugsy finds him there. He doesn't know why he came. Maybe loyalty, maybe guilt, maybe just the memory of the Bronx. He takes the chair across from him. You look terrible, Bugsy says. Dutch smiles faintly. Terrible is honest. Honest is rare. They sit in silence. The trumpet sighs. The bartender wipes the same glass for too long. You heard what they're saying? Bugsy finally says. That I've gone crazy? Yeah, they're wrong. I just see clearer than they do. Dutch leans in, eyes bright and wild. They think law is power. They think papers and taxes make kings. But it's all noise, Ben. All of it. The rain, the court, the money, it's just the world trying to drown us before we wake up. Bugsy stares, unsure whether to pity or fear him. You can't fight everyone, Dutch. You think I'm fighting? No, kid. I'm preaching. He laughs, a sound sharp enough to break glass. Then softer. You'll understand someday when the money stops feeling like victory. Bugsy doesn't reply. He knows better than to argue with a man already speaking to ghosts. When Bugsy leaves, the rain follows him down the street, heavy and cold. He lights a cigarette beneath an awning, exhales slowly, and watches the smoke twist into the night. He wants to forget Dutch's eyes, that mix of genius and ruin, but he can't. Meyer's waiting when he returns. He doesn't ask what happened. He just says, "He's done, isn't he?" Bugsy nods. Yeah. And he doesn't even know it. 2 days later, the newspapers scream again. Dutch Schultz shot in Newark. 4 dead. 2 clinging to life. 1 unrepentant. Dutch doesn't die right away. He lingers for 20 hours, delirious, mumbling. The nurses say he talks about heaven, numbers, and a hidden treasure. He keeps asking for rain. When they tell him it's dry outside, he smiles and says, "Not where I am." By morning, he's gone. Meyer doesn't attend the funeral. He stays home, running his fingers over old ledgers, lines of ink that once connected Dutch to them all. He closes the book, sets it aside. "We start over," he says. Bugsy pours 2 glasses of whiskey, slides one across the table. To the end of noise. To the beginning of silence. They drink. Outside, thunder rolls once, then fades. Weeks pass. The city forgets fast. New names rise, new rackets bloom, new men claim to own the night. But in some quiet corners, Dutch's story lingers. The mad prophet who thought he could outshout the storm. Bugsy keeps seeing his face in the smoke of bars, the reflection of train windows, the sheen of wet asphalt. Meyer keeps seeing the pattern, the math of mortality, how every king leaves a gap for the next one to fill. They don't talk about him anymore. Not directly. But his ghost has a way of showing up when it rains. Late one evening, Bugsy finds himself walking alone through Times Square. The rain drizzles light off the billboards and puddles. Couples hurry under umbrellas. A taxi horn cries like a trumpet solo. He stops outside a theater, staring at the posters. Bright colors, big promises. The American Dream, one of them reads. He laughs quietly. "Yeah," he murmurs. "That's the trick, isn't it?" The rain answers for him, steady, endless, indifferent. Somewhere uptown, Meyer is awake at his desk. He's drawing again, lines, arrows, boxes, but cleaner now. He's learned from Dutch's noise. He's designing something quieter, safer, something that will last. No preachers, he whispers. No prophets, just builders. He underlines a word on the page, control. Then beneath it another, Vegas. He doesn't know why he writes it. Maybe something Bugsy said, maybe something the rain whispered, but when he sees the word on paper, it feels inevitable. The night grows darker. The rain slows to a drizzle, softer now, almost kind. In the stillness, the city breathes again, a long, tired sigh after years of noise. Somewhere a jazz record ends. Somewhere else a dream begins. And in that quiet space between thunder and dawn, 3 men drift further apart. One buried, one building, one dreaming of a city that doesn't exist yet. But the rain knows their names. It always does. You can't bury the sound of ambition, the narrator whispers. You can only let it sleep. The first time Bugsy Siegel saw the Nevada desert, he thought it was dead. Just sand and silence stretching so far it made sound feel like a memory. But then he stepped out of the car, the heat wrapping him like an invisible flame, and he smiled. He didn't see emptiness. He saw space. A blank canvas. A place where no one had written the rules yet. He took off his sunglasses and said to no one in particular, "You know what this place needs? Light." The wind answered with a hiss that sounded almost like laughter. It was 1945, and America had changed. The war was over. Men came home with medals, women went back to kitchens, and money flowed through the country like warm rain. New York still pulsed, Havana still glimmered, but Bugsy wanted something different. Something new, clean, American. He had left behind the cold alleys, the double-dealing, the ghosts of Harlem. He was done with rain. He wanted sunlight. Meyer Lansky didn't trust the idea. He'd seen too many dreams turn to dust, literally and figuratively. He warned Bugsy with the patience of a man who's buried more friends than he can count. Deserts don't build dreams, Ben. They bury them. Bugsy grinned. Then I'll build one high enough the sand can't reach. Meyer shook his head, closed his notebook, and said nothing more. He'd learned that when Bugsy started seeing stars, no amount of math could bring him back down. Bugsy rented a house in Beverly Hills, white walls, palm trees, and a pool that reflected the blue California sky. He threw parties there, loud ones, full of film stars, politicians, and wide-eyed investors who thought charm was safer than honesty. When he spoke about Vegas, his voice had the pull of a sermon. Think about it, he'd say. A resort in the middle of nowhere. Glamour. Lights. Music. A city where the night never ends. They laughed at first until they didn't. He had that effect, turning madness into momentum. One night, an old producer asked him, "And what will you call this miracle, Mr. Siegel?" Bugsy smiled, eyes bright. "The Flamingo." The name hung in the air like perfume, strange, elegant, unforgettable. The land he bought was flat and endless. A highway cut through it like a scar, and the sun turned the air into gold. He stood there one evening, the sky blushing pink, and whispered, "It's going to shine. Brighter than anything." Behind him, workers hammered, trucks roared, dust rose like ghosts. Blueprints fluttered in the wind, promises on paper. He saw a ballroom where there was only dirt, fountains where there was only wind. Every time he blinked, the future rearranged itself, and somehow it always ended in light. But dreams are expensive, and Bugsy's taste for perfection was endless. Costs tripled, deadlines dissolved. The Flamingo devoured dollars faster than he could charm them from investors. The desert began to whisper doubts. Meyer visited once, wearing his usual calm-like armor. They stood together under the unending sky. "You've lost control," Meyer said. Bugsy laughed softly. "I never had control. I had vision. Vision doesn't balance ledgers. You sound like my accountant." "I am your accountant." Bugsy turned to him, the sunset bleeding into his face. "You don't get it, Meyer. This isn't about money. It's about forever." Meyer sighed, looking at the sand. "Forever's a word men like us shouldn't use." At night, Bugsy walked the half-built corridors of the Flamingo alone. The walls weren't up yet, but he could already hear the music. The laughter, the roulette wheels, the perfume, the jazz. He whispered to the darkness, "You'll see. They'll all see." Sometimes he slept there, on a folding chair, the desert wind brushing through open windows like a ghost trying to keep him awake. He dreamed of pink lights and endless applause. And always, when he woke, he could almost hear rain, though there hadn't been a cloud in months. By the time the Flamingo opened, half the investors had fled and the press was sharpening its knives. The opening night was a disaster. The kitchen failed, the lights flickered, the guests left early. Even the slot machines jammed. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying sand across the neon like static. Bugsy stood in the lobby, alone in his tuxedo, the noise dying around him. He looked at the ceiling, the chandeliers trembling, and whispered, "It's not the end. It's just rain before the sun." He believed it. He always did. In Los Angeles, Meyer sat by the window of his hotel suite, reading the financial pages. The numbers told a story Bugsy wouldn't listen to: bankruptcy, betrayal, blood. He folded the paper and looked out into the night, where the rain had begun again. "You can't outshine the storm, Ben," he murmured. "You just change where it falls." Weeks later, Bugsy received a call at home. The voice on the other end was quiet, polite, final. He didn't argue. He just said, "Tell Meyer I did it. Tell him it worked." That evening, the neighbors heard what sounded like thunder, though the sky was clear. In Beverly Hills, the rain had finally stopped, and for Bugsy Siegel, so had time. The desert, however, remembered him. When the Flamingo reopened months later, it was everything he'd promised, glittering, golden, alive. Gamblers lined the floors. Music filled the air. And outside, under the same stars he once stared at, the neon burned pink against the endless black. Meyer stood there one night, hat in hand, watching the lights shimmer through heat and dust. He didn't smile, but he didn't leave either. He just whispered to the wind. He was right. The desert does shine. And somewhere beyond the glow, maybe in the hum of the power lines or the hiss of distant sand, a familiar voice seemed to echo, faint and proud. "Told you so." The Flamingo became a monument, not to crime, but to imagination. A dream that refused to die even when the dreamer did. Vegas would grow from that spark. Towers, casinos, lights that outlived their makers. But under all the neon, the desert stayed the same, quiet, eternal, waiting for the next man to think he could outsmart forever. And sometimes, on nights when the wind turns soft and the lights flicker just so, locals swear they hear rain, faint, impossible, falling where no clouds ever come. Every miracle, the narrator whispers, is just madness that refused to stop. The desert never forgets. It remembers every footprint, every mirage, every man who thought he could rewrite its silence. When the wind shifts at night, it carries whispers, not of ghosts but of unfinished dreams. Meyer Lansky hears them. He stands outside the Flamingo on a cool Nevada evening, the neon humming like an electric prayer. He doesn't gamble. He never does. But he watches the tables through the glass, the faces lit in gold, the hands shuffling cards, the illusion of luck sold in perfect rhythm. It's beautiful in a way. A machine that runs on human hope. And it all began with a boy who once stood beside him under Bronx rain, talking about a future too bright for the world they knew. Meyer checks his watch. Midnight. Inside, laughter swells like a tide. The Flamingo is alive now, Bugsy's ghost wrapped in silk and money. But every success has a price tag, and Meyer knows exactly how much this one cost. He turns from the window, coat collar up against the wind. There's always a flight to catch, a meeting to attend, a deal to balance. The world has changed since the Bronx. The rules haven't. In Havana, the air smells of sugar, rum, and danger. The rain here comes warm, not a punishment, but a rhythm. Meyer likes that. He rents a room overlooking the Malecon, where the ocean crashes against the wall like a heartbeat that never stops. At his desk, he opens a notebook. The first line reads, "Every empire begins with order." He starts sketching lines, arrows, circles, pathways. Casinos, hotels, laundries, fronts. Every flow of money, every man who touches it. He calls it the blueprint. Not for Vegas, that dream is built. This one is bigger, cleaner, untouchable. He spends hours mapping it out. The system is elegant, invisible threads connecting everything like veins through a living body. Cuba to Miami. Miami to New York. New York to Switzerland. Money moving so smoothly that no one can see it except him. It's not crime anymore, not really. It's infrastructure. An economy of shadows. Sometimes, when he grows tired, he looks out over the city. Havana glows at night. Red lights, soft laughter, cars sliding through wet streets. Tourists fill the casinos. Music seeps from every window. The whole island hums with rhythm and deceit. And Meyer feels something close to peace. But peace never lasts. One evening, an old acquaintance visits. Luciano, exiled but not forgotten. He moves slower now, but his smile is the same. Sharp, polite, dangerous. "You built quite a thing here," Luciano says, gazing over the harbor. "You built it too," Meyer replies. "Yeah," Luciano chuckles. "But you're the one who made it clean." They sit in silence for a while. Rain begins to fall, steady, rhythmic, tapping against the balcony rails. "You ever think about the kid?" Luciano asks. "Which one?" "Bugsy." Meyer's jaw tightens. He doesn't answer. "He had fire," Luciano continues softly. "Too much of it. Men like him burn fast." Meyer nods. "And men like us build from the ashes." Luciano smiles, raises his glass. "To ashes then." They drink while thunder rolls across the Caribbean. Meyer stays in Havana for years. He learns to move quietly, through governments, banks, and whispers. He owns nothing but controls everything. He becomes the architect, not of crime, but of equilibrium. Sometimes in the quiet after rain, he hears Bugsy's voice, soft, stubborn, full of light. "It's supposed to shine, Meyer?" "It does," he murmurs. "But it costs." Then history changes its rhythm. Revolution sweeps the island. Men in fatigues march through the streets, chanting about justice and freedom and ending the old order. Meyer watches from his balcony as the future he built collapses in slow motion. Casinos shudder. Hotels empty. The blueprint frays at the edges. He leaves at dawn, suitcase in hand, coat soaked with tropical rain. No farewell, no ceremony. Just departure. Like pulling a thread from a tapestry and pretending it won't unravel. In Miami the air feels thinner. He buys a small house by the sea. No guards. No chauffeurs. No secrets. The sound of the waves reminds him of the Bronx rain. Only slower, older, more forgiving. He spends his mornings walking the beach, his afternoons reading newspapers he doesn't believe in, his nights staring at ledgers that no longer matter. People still whisper his name in the underworld. The accountant, the architect, the man who never missed a cent. But Meyer doesn't care. He's too busy remembering. Sometimes, late at night, he opens the old notebook. The pages are yellowed, the ink faded, but the blueprint is still there, perfect and precise. Every arrow, every loop, every connection. He traces it with his finger, smiling faintly. "You see, Ben," he murmurs, "you weren't wrong. The dream worked. It just needed someone to keep the lights on after you were gone." The wind rattles the window, and for a second, it almost sounds like applause. He dreams often now, of rain on Bronx rooftops, of neon in the desert, of warm Havana nights. The three cities blend into one, stitched together by thunder and memory. Sometimes Dutch appears too, laughing somewhere just out of sight. They're all there, the dreamer, the prophet, the architect. Three boys who thought they could outsmart the world. And maybe, in their own way, they did. One morning, Meyer wakes before dawn. The sky is pale blue, the kind that almost hurts to look at. He steps outside, the sand cool under his feet. The tide is low. The world is quiet. He closes his eyes and listens, not for the ocean but for something deeper. The sound of rain that isn't there. The echo of footsteps through time. "We built it," he whispers. "All of it. The empire, the dream, the silence." And then, as if on cue, a drop of rain hits his hand. Just one. But it's enough. He smiles. "Guess the desert followed me home." The narrator's voice lowers, soft and fading. Some men build cities. Some build illusions. But only a few build both, and live long enough to regret it. The rain begins again, gentle as forgiveness, steady as memory. The world exhales. And the blueprint, like all great designs, disappears into the sound of falling water. The house on Hillcrest Drive was quiet. Too quiet, the way a stage feels before the curtain rises. The city outside hummed with soft traffic, 1,000 lives passing without noticing that tonight would be remembered by none of them. Bugsy Siegel stood in front of the mirror, buttoning his tuxedo. The reflection was perfect. Slick hair, sharp jaw, blue eyes that caught light like water. But under the surface something flickered, exhaustion maybe, or truth. He had dinner plans. Just dinner. Nothing more dramatic than that. A few close friends, a bottle of wine, a quiet night. He told himself he deserved it. Beverly Hills glittered that evening. The streets still smelled faintly of orange blossoms and gasoline. The rain had come and gone, leaving the air washed and heavy with memory. Bugsy drove with the windows down, the radio whispering a slow trumpet tune from some late-night jazz station. The voice on the air said, "Here's one for dreamers still awake." He smiled. That was him. A dreamer still awake. Dinner was at a friend's house, Virginia Hill's place, a few miles away. The lights were soft, the laughter easy, the mood gentle like the eye of a storm that doesn't know it's almost over. Bugsy ate slowly, spoke quietly. No grand stories tonight, no loud promises. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes people nervous because it means a man has started thinking about the end. Someone asked about Vegas. He said it was beautiful. Someone mentioned the investors. He said it would all work out. Someone poured him another drink. He said thank you and meant it. When the rain started again outside, light as static on glass, he looked toward the window and whispered, "Good." I was starting to miss the sound. No one heard him. Later that night, after everyone left, he stayed behind. He liked the silence. The house was all glass and reflections. His kind of place. He walked room to room, drink in hand, the ice melting slow as time. He thought about the Bronx, about Meyer's steady voice, about Dutch's wild eyes. All ghosts now, one way or another. He wondered which one of them had been right about the world, the dreamer, the prophet, or the architect. Maybe all of them. Maybe none. Midnight came quietly. He sat by the window, curtains half open, looking out at the street below. The rain had slowed to a mist, blurring the palm trees and the parked cars into watercolor shadows. He took a deep breath, let it out, and smiled. It was a tired smile, but honest. "It shines," he murmured to the empty room. "Just like I said it would." For a moment, it almost felt like peace. Then came the knock. Soft, polite, expected. He didn't turn right away. He knew the sound, the kind that carries finality behind it. "It's open," he said. The door creaked. Pause. A whisper of movement. Then, thunder. Two sharp cracks, loud enough to startle the rain itself. The glass shattered, the light dimmed, and Bugsy Siegel leaned forward as if to catch his reflection one last time before it vanished completely. He didn't fall fast. The world seemed to slow for him, sound stretching, breath hanging, rain pausing midair. He thought, in that strange stillness, of the Flamingo sign glowing against desert night, of Meyer's warning voice, of Virginia's perfume, of every step that brought him here. He almost laughed. "It really did shine," he whispered. Then nothing. The papers called it murder. The cops called it business. Meyer called it inevitable. But the desert called it memory. And the rain called it mercy. When Meyer heard the news, he didn't speak for a long time. He sat in his Havana office, the radio humming a static waltz, and just listened to the thunder rolling far offshore. He'd known it was coming. Men like Bugsy never fade quietly, they go out like fireworks, too bright to last. He poured a drink, raised it toward the window, and said softly, "You got your light, Ben?" Then he drank, and the silence that followed was heavier than grief. In Las Vegas, the Flamingo stayed open. Night after night, people poured through its doors, laughing, drinking, forgetting. The lights never dimmed, the wheels never stopped spinning. No plaque, no shrine, no whisper of the man who dreamed it first. But the neon still burned pink against the desert dark, a color that never belonged to anyone else. Some nights, the dealers swore they felt a draft of cool air sweep through the casino, like a window opening somewhere unseen. The chandelier would sway. A single chip would roll off the table without reason. They'd look around, smile nervously, and say, "Guess Bugsy's checking in." The pit bosses didn't like talk like that, but even they couldn't deny. Sometimes the lights flickered for no reason. In Beverly Hills, rain fell again a week later. Neighbors said it hadn't rained that hard in years. Lightning flashed once, far away, and the sound echoed down the canyon. Someone said it sounded like gunfire. Someone else said it sounded like applause. Either way, the sky stayed open until morning. The narrator's voice lowers, soft as breath. The dreamer never feared the rain. He built his city under it. And when the storm came for him, he smiled because he knew, even the sky can't wash away light. Pause. Then, faintly, the rain grows softer, steady, forgiving. "Sleep now," the voice whispers. The desert is quiet. The lights are still on. The rain in Havana was never cold. It came soft, like a curtain being drawn across a stage, blurring the city into watercolor. Palm leaves shimmered under lightning, and the smell of salt and sugar hung in the air. Meyer Lansky liked nights like this, nights that reminded him of how easily beauty and danger could share the same room. He lived in a penthouse above the Malecon, high enough to see the ocean breathing. From there, he watched ships crawl toward the horizon, lights blinking like tired stars. Every night, the city below pulsed with music and sin, casinos glittering, dice rolling, laughter spilling into rain-slicked streets. And somewhere in that rhythm, he heard the ghosts again. Dutch's voice came first, loud, defiant, impossible to silence. "You can't tame chaos, kid. You just rent it." Then Bugsy, softer, wistful. "They'll come for the dream, Meyer, but they'll never take the shine." Meyer poured himself a drink and let the words fade. He didn't argue with the dead. They'd already won their parts of history. He'd come to Havana to finish what they started, to build an empire without bullets, a network without noise. And he had. For years, the city danced to his quiet rhythm. Casinos thrived. Politicians smiled. The American dollar flowed like rum. Even the rain seemed to fall on cue. He'd learned to run the world like an orchestra. A bribe here, a whisper there, a favor called in before dawn. No headlines. No bodies. Just balance. It was the perfect crime because it looked like order. Tonight, though, Havana felt different. Something in the air had shifted, not just the weather but the pulse of the island itself. You could feel it in the way soldiers stared too long at the casino doors, in how the locals stopped laughing when Americans walked by. The revolution was coming. Everyone knew it. Only the gamblers pretended not to. Meyer sat on his balcony watching lightning bloom over the sea. He'd seen empires rise and crumble before. They always looked the same just before they fell, too proud, too bright, too sure of themselves. He opened his notebook, the same one he'd carried since the Bronx. Its pages were soft now, edges worn, the ink faded to a deep gray. He ran his hand over a sketch, a network of circles and arrows, each one a memory, a city, a life. New York, Vegas, Havana. All built on precision. All doomed by passion. The phone rang. It was Luciano. Still in exile, still charming the devil. "You hear the news?" "I hear everything," Meyer said. "They're coming for the casinos. And the cash. They can have the walls. They'll never find the foundation." Luciano laughed, the sound rough with age. "You always were the smart one." "No, just the one who lived longer." The call ended with rain against the window, soft, persistent, unjudging. By morning, the streets were loud again. Marching, shouting, songs that weren't in any jukebox. The revolution had found its rhythm. And Meyer knew what came next. He packed quietly. Papers. 2 notebooks. Nothing else. Before leaving, he walked through the casino one last time. The chandeliers still sparkled. The tables still spun. Tourists laughed, oblivious. He paused beside the roulette wheel, fingers brushing the green felt. "You never cared who won, did you?" he whispered. The dealer, not knowing who he was, smiled politely. Meyer dropped a single chip, Bugsy's favorite number. 17. The wheel spun. The ball clattered. 17 hit. Meyer smiled faintly. "You always did have good timing, kid." He turned and walked out into the rain. The airport was chaos, soldiers shouting, families crying, the sky heavy with thunder. He boarded the last plane to Miami with no fanfare, no goodbye. Just a small carry-on and the ghost of music following him up the stairs. As the plane lifted off, lightning flared across the sea, painting Havana in flashes of gold and gray. From above, the city looked almost peaceful, a sleeping animal unaware it had already been wounded. Meyer watched until it disappeared behind clouds. Then he closed his eyes and listened to the engines hum like a slow heartbeat. He wasn't sad, just tired. Empires don't end in fire. They end in silence. In Miami, he bought a modest house by the water, nothing like the palaces he'd once owned, but clean, simple, and quiet. He'd walk the beach at dawn, hands in pockets, shoes sinking into the wet sand. Sometimes the ocean breeze carried faint echoes of Havana's trumpets. Other times it brought nothing at all, just the whisper of waves and the occasional memory refusing to die. He'd see faces in the foam. Dutch laughing. Bugsy smiling. Even Luciano nodding from some imagined corner of the afterlife. He never told anyone about that. Some ghosts belonged to their keepers alone. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, he sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey and the old notebook open on his lap. The pages were almost blank now, most of the ink washed away by years and humidity. He picked up a pen, hesitated, then wrote slowly. "All lights fade, but the rain remembers." He closed the book, took a sip, and watched the last light sink beneath the sea. Thunder rolled far away, soft, respectful, as if it knew who it was speaking to. When the rain began, he didn't move inside. He let it soak his suit, his hair, his paper. The water was warm, forgiving. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "We did it, boys. We built something that lived." Lightning flickered. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw them standing there on the sand, Bugsy, Dutch, and himself, all young again, all laughing in the storm. Then the vision dissolved into rain. He passed quietly a few years later in his sleep. No newspaper headline. No trial. No grand ending. Just a soft night in Miami and the steady rhythm of waves against shore. But the world he built, the silent empire, the blueprint of shadows, it never disappeared. It only changed shape, like rain becoming mist, like thunder turning into memory. In Las Vegas, the Flamingo still glowed. In Havana, old men still told stories about the Jewish accountant who never gambled but always won. And in the Bronx, if you listened hard enough during a storm, you could almost hear laughter from a century ago. 3 boys running under the rain, chasing dreams they couldn't name yet. The narrator's voice softens to a whisper. Some men build legends in blood. Others build them in silence. Meyer Lansky built his in rain, patient, precise, eternal. The sound of the ocean fades into rain, soft and endless. "Sleep now," the voice says. "The ghosts are home." There are rains that fall on streets and rains that fall inside men. This one falls somewhere in between. The night is endless. No city, no horizon. Just water and wind and memory. Meyer Lansky walks along a road that isn't there, cobblestones and puddles that reflect nothing. Each step sounds like a heartbeat he's borrowed from the past. The air smells of Havana and New York, of whiskey and ocean salt. Somewhere far away, a neon light flickers, pink against the dark. The sound of roulette wheels drifts in and out of the rain like an unfinished lullaby. He realizes after a while that he isn't walking alone. From the mist ahead, a figure appears, tall, broad, with a grin that dares the sky to strike him down. That's Schultz. Still young, still angry, but softer now, as if the thunder has finally forgiven him. "You look tired, Meyer," he says. "I've been resting." "That's not what resting looks like." Meyer smirks faintly. "And you look sober. We must both be ghosts." Dutch laughs, that same reckless, musical laugh that once rattled Harlem. "Guess the good Lord wanted me cleaned up for Judgment Day. Did you get one?" Meyer asks. "A judgment?" "Nah, just a replay. Over and over. The rain, the bar, the words I shouldn't have said. They make you watch your own noise until it turns into silence." Meyer nods slowly. "That's not punishment. That's accounting." Dutch chuckles. "Still keeping ledgers, huh?" "Always." The rain deepens, more sound than storm. A faint glow moves toward them, soft and familiar. Bugsy Siegel steps out of the haze, white suit immaculate, tie undone, eyes bright with the same dangerous hope. "You two look terrible," he says. "We look dead," Dutch replies. "Then at least we're consistent." He tilts his head, studying Meyer. "You never came to visit. You never invited me. I figured you'd be too busy counting ghosts." Meyer doesn't smile, but his eyes soften. "I counted until there was nothing left to balance." Bugsy looks around, the endless rain, the faint hum of invisible cities. What is this place? Meyer glances upward, though there's no sky to see. Maybe a memory that hasn't decided whether to fade. They walk together in silence. The road twists, becoming sand, then water, then polished marble that reflects their faces. Every reflection is a different age, young, middle, old, each one looking back with quiet recognition. Dutch kicks a pebble that splashes and turns into a coin before it sinks. "All that money, huh? Look at us now. Nothing but rain." Bugsy laughs. "You ever notice how rain and roulette sound the same when you close your eyes?" Meyer pauses. "Everything sounds the same once you stop wanting." Dutch scoffs. "Don't start preaching now, accountant. You kept the world spinning with math while we were out making the noise." Meyer turns toward him, calm as ever. "And what did your noise build?" Dutch opens his mouth, then closes it. He looks at his hands, solid yet not. The rain runs through them like ink. "Maybe it built this," he murmurs. They reach a door. Old wood, no handle. It stands alone in the rain, glowing faintly. Bugsy runs a hand across it. It's warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Think it's heaven?" "If it were," Meyer says, "it wouldn't let us knock." Dutch smirks. "Hell then?" "No," Meyer answers. "Just somewhere between." The rain slows. The world hushes. They stand together. Three men who once shaped cities and now shape only silence. Bugsy leans against the frame. "You ever think it was worth it?" "The money?" Dutch asks. "The noise," Bugsy says. "The fight. The dream." Meyer exhales. "It was never about worth. It was about movement. We moved because standing still meant dying sooner. And we died anyway," Dutch says. "Yes," Meyer replies, "but at least we died forward." The door creaks open. Inside, not light, not darkness. Just sound. Soft rain, piano notes, a woman's voice humming a tune from a bar that hasn't existed in 50 years. Bugsy steps closer, almost smiling. "That's mine," he says. "Virginia used to hum that when the lights went out." Dutch pats his shoulder. "Then you better go before the song ends." Bugsy hesitates. "You coming?" Meyer shakes his head. "Not yet." Bugsy nods. He steps through, and the rain brightens for just a moment, like a city switching on all its lights at once. Then he's gone. Dutch lights a cigarette that the rain can't put out. He always did need the applause. "He earned it," Meyer says quietly. They stand in silence, the glow of the doorway fading. "You think we'll get one of those?" Dutch asks. Meyer closes his notebook. "One last time. We already did. We just didn't recognize it." Dutch laughs softly. "You mean the rain?" "The rain," Meyer says, "and the chance to walk through it." A low rumble fills the air, not thunder, not machines. It's the sound of cities breathing, the Bronx, Las Vegas, Havana, all layered together, heartbeats overlapping through time. The rain begins to rise instead of fall, turning into mist that lifts, slow and luminous. Dutch tosses his cigarette into it. "Guess this is the part where we disappear." "No," Meyer says. "Just the part where we're remembered differently." Dutch grins. "That's your prayer, huh?" Meyer nods once. "That's my prayer." They walk toward the horizon that isn't there. The rain fades, the sound softens, and the light evens out into something endless and kind. For a moment, the world feels whole, like a ledger finally balanced. And somewhere, carried on the last whisper of the storm, three voices overlap. "We built it. We lost it. We became it." Then the sound fades into the rhythm of falling water, steady as breath, eternal as regret. The narrator's voice lowers, soft and slow, the tone of a final confession. Every empire has an afterlife. Some find it in gold, others in glory. But the wise, the tired, find it in rain. Pause. Then almost a whisper. "Sleep now. The noise is gone. The books are balanced. The rain keeps the rest." Miami, 1978. The rain hasn't fallen in days, but the air still smells of it, heavy, waiting. The ocean hums softly beyond the glass balcony, a steady pulse that never stops, not even for old men. Meyer Lansky wakes before dawn as he always has. Sleep has never been loyal to him. He shaves, straightens the cuffs of his white shirt, and sits at the small kitchen table with a cup of black coffee that goes cold before he finishes it. The morning paper rests unopened beside him. He already knows what's in it. Wars, markets, presidents, scandals, noise dressed as news. He stares at the condensation on the window, tracing shapes with a finger. It's raining in his memory even when the sky is clear. His house is quiet. No servants, no phones ringing, no partners calling. Just silence and the distant laughter of tourists echoing down Collins Avenue. Sometimes he stands by the window for hours, watching the world move without him. Young couples, sunburned children, joggers with headphones. All of them chasing something they can't name. He understands that. He's been chasing ghosts his entire life. On the table sits his old leather notebook. The pages are thin as breath, corners curled. He doesn't write in it anymore. He just keeps it nearby like a relic of the life that made him. Sometimes he opens it to random pages, running his hand over faded numbers and notes. So many lines, so many loops, the architecture of a world no one remembers but him. He still remembers the texture of every city. New York smelled like ambition and laundry steam. Vegas smelled like heat and perfume. Havana smelled like sugar and smoke. Each city had its own heartbeat, and once he'd been the man who kept them all in rhythm. Now the rhythm has outlived the drummer. He walks down to the beach every afternoon. It's a ritual, though he wouldn't call it that. Barefoot, he moves slowly across the sand, the surf licking at his ankles. Sometimes he talks to the sea, quietly, politely, like greeting an old colleague. "You remember them, don't you?" he says. "Dutch Bugsy Lucky. All the noise we made." The waves answer, not with words, but with rhythm, steady, patient, older than all their sins. He sits on the same bench near the lifeguard tower, watching the horizon melt into haze. He likes how the line between sea and sky disappears. No borders, no balance sheets, just endless blue. A place without rules. People recognize him sometimes. Old faces, older stories. A man once approached him, nervous, respectful, and said, "Mr. Lansky, is it true you built Vegas?" Meyer smiled faintly. "No one builds a city alone. We all just hold the hammer for a while." The man laughed, not understanding. Few ever did. In the evenings he sits by the radio. He doesn't watch television. Too much movement. Too many lies pretending to be motion. The radio is different, slower, kinder, the way sound should be. Sometimes it plays Sinatra, sometimes silence between stations. Both are equally comforting. One night a song comes on, "I'll Be Seeing You." He closes his eyes. The music takes him somewhere else. Bronx rooftops. Rain. Two boys under a street lamp, plotting forever. He sees Bugsy's grin. Dutch's scowl. Lucky's smirk. And himself, smaller, sharper, quieter, holding the numbers that made their noise possible. He doesn't feel guilt anymore. Just distance. Like looking at stars whose light took too long to arrive. Sometimes he dreams of Havana. He walks through the casino again, the air thick with smoke and laughter. The band plays, the dice roll, and everyone is alive again. Bugsy's at the bar, toasting the crowd. Dutch is in the corner, dealing cards to angels who cheat better than men. Luciano leans against the piano, humming along. And Meyer, he's where he always was, counting quietly at the edge of the stage, making sure the music never stops. When he wakes, the sound lingers a while, like perfume from another room. The doctors visit sometimes. They talk about blood pressure, about sleep, about slowing down. He nods, thanks them, and keeps his secrets. There's nothing to slow down from. He hasn't moved fast in years. They ask if he believes in God. He says, "I believe in math. It's the only language that never lies." They laugh politely, not realizing it isn't a joke. One morning, after a sleepless night, he writes something new in the notebook. Just one sentence. "I spent my life making the world fair, one unholy transaction at a time." He studies the line, then closes the book. Outside, thunder growls softly, far away but coming closer. He smiles. Finally, the rain again. When it starts, it's gentle. A whisper on the balcony, a memory returning home. He opens the door and steps out. The air tastes like salt and electricity. The drops hit his hands, warm, steady, familiar. "Took you long enough," he says to the storm. He sits in a wicker chair, watching the rain blur the ocean into mist. Lightning flickers far out at sea where no ships pass anymore. He imagines Bugsy there, somewhere beyond the horizon, standing in a pink neon glow, still smiling. And Dutch, laughing loud enough to wake the dead. He closes his eyes. The thunder is a lullaby now. Inside, the radio keeps playing softly, An old jazz tune fading in and out through static. The room smells of rain and memory. The notebook rests open on the table, the ink bleeding slowly, numbers turning to rivers. The clock ticks once, twice, then forgets to continue. Outside, the rain grows heavier, not mournful, not angry, just present. A neighbor later says she saw him sitting there, eyes closed, hand resting on the armrest as if waiting for someone to speak. When she called his name, he didn't answer. But she swore she heard faint laughter, not from him but from the rain itself. In Vegas that night, the lights of the Flamingo flickered once, just before midnight. No one noticed but the janitor sweeping near the lobby. He looked up, muttered, "Weird," and kept working. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert, a sound too soft to be a storm, too far to be ignored. The narrator's voice drifts low, calm as breath. He never slept. Not really. Even when the world forgot his name, he stayed awake, listening to the rhythm of his own creation. Pause. And when the rain came for him, it didn't take. It simply whispered, "Rest now. The books are closed." The rain softens to a murmur. A jazz trumpet fades into the distance, the kind that sounds like both farewell and forgiveness. "Sleep now," the voice says. "The architect's work is done. The night has no edges now. Only sound. Only rain. It falls across 3 cities at once. The Bronx, Havana, Las Vegas, washing through time like a record spinning back to its first note. Streetlights hum. The desert glows faintly beneath distant thunder. And somewhere, between memory and mercy, the voices begin again. Bugsy Siegel stands under a pink neon sign that shouldn't exist anymore. The Flamingo hums behind him, alive as ever. He looks up at the sky, the color of melted silver, and smiles. "You hear that?" he says softly. "Still raining." He buttons his jacket out of habit, though ghosts don't get cold. His shoes are polished. His hair perfect. He's forever the man who believed beauty could save a sinner if you built it high enough. The lights of the casino flicker like a pulse. He turns, glancing over his shoulder, expecting to see Meyer's calm silhouette somewhere behind him. He isn't wrong. Meyer Lansky walks out of the shadows, hat low, coat collar turned up. His steps make no sound. He looks at Bugsy with that same weary fondness, the look of a man who loved and feared brilliance in equal measure. "You kept the lights on," Bugsy says. "You kept the dream alive," Meyer replies. They stand together for a moment, the rain pooling around their shoes, the neon shimmering through it like stained glass. If heaven ever existed for men like them, it would probably look like this, half rain, half redemption. A third voice joins them, louder, rougher, laughing through the thunder. Dutch Schultz. The storm made flesh. He walks out from the street, tipping an invisible hat. "Look at us," he says. "The unholy trinity of bad timing." Bugsy grins. Meyer shakes his head. "You still causing trouble, Dutch?" "Only the good kind. The kind that gets remembered." Dutch looks up, letting the rain hit his face. "Feels cleaner than I remember." "It is," Meyer says. "We've been forgiven. Or forgotten. Hard to tell which." The city around them shifts, a blend of eras and skylines. Brick alleys melt into casinos, lampposts become palm trees, jazz echoes from everywhere and nowhere. It's not New York, not Vegas, not Havana. It's all of them, merged into one long exhale of history. Bugsy lights a cigarette that glows brighter than fire should. "You think they still talk about us?" Meyer nods. "Sometimes, in whispers, when the rain's too loud for truth." "And what do they say?" "That we built the underworld like an empire, and the empire like a prayer." Dutch smirks. "Then they miss the point. We didn't build it for them. We built it because no one else would let us dream." They start walking side by side. The streets rearrange under their feet, wet pavement becoming desert dust, then marble floors, then nothing at all. The sound of a trumpet drifts through the air, slow, low, the kind that sounds like memory learning how to breathe again. Bugsy closes his eyes. He can still see her, Virginia, laughing in the doorway, the smell of her perfume mixed with gunpowder and rain. For a second, he almost believes he can step back into that moment. But the world keeps moving even here. "You ever regret it?" he asks. Meyer doesn't answer right away. Then quietly, "Regrets for men who had another choice." Dutch chuckles. "Then I guess we're all innocent." They all laugh, a sound that feels human again. A door appears ahead of them. No handle, no hinges, no sign. Just light spilling out from its cracks, bright as dawn. "Looks familiar," Dutch says. "We've been here before," Meyer murmurs. "Then maybe this time," Bugsy says, "we go through together." They pause at the threshold. The rain slows as if waiting for permission to stop. Bugsy reaches out first, his hand steady, his reflection clear in the glow. Meyer and Dutch stand beside him, silent but certain. And for the first time in all their lives, they don't lead or command or calculate. They simply step forward. What waits inside isn't heaven or hell. It's light, not blinding but soft, forgiving. A bar somewhere between worlds. Jazz playing slow and tired. A woman singing in a voice the color of smoke. Tables lined with familiar faces, gamblers, barkeeps, hustlers, saints, sinners. Everyone they ever knew or thought they did. They take a booth in the corner. 3 glasses appear. No one pours. No one needs to. Bugsy raises his first. To the dream. Dutch lifts his. To the noise. Meyer holds his a moment longer, the rain outside fading into a hum. To the balance. They drink. The thunder outside turns to applause. The narrator's voice enters again, calm and steady, like the last line of an old poem. History never ends. It just gets quieter. The names fade, the cities change, the rain keeps falling. But somewhere beneath all that forgetting, the dream still burns. 3 lights in the storm, refusing to go out. Pause. The sound of rain returns, softer, closer, like fingertips against glass. They were not villains. They were dreamers who mistook ambition for eternity. And in their failure, they built something that lasted longer than they ever could. Another pause. A whisper. So sleep now. The streets are clean. The tables are closed. The night belongs to the rain. The screen fades to black. The rain continues. For a long time, nothing else happens. Just the sound of water falling, steady and eternal. Then, faintly, a voice, Bugsy's, barely audible beneath the storm. Hey Meyer. I told you it would shine. And the rain answers, softly, endlessly.